All right, well, we're excited to be here today with Shayla Yon, and we're gonna ask Shayla lots of questions about her background and her journey to this place, but first, a little setup, which is that one of our hopes is to give people in our program and people in, interested in studying sport leadership, a real concrete idea of what it looks like in different ways. And so whether that's in the coaching world or in the college sports world, it's important that we get some context to how the work is being done and where it's being done. So we're going to ask Shayla specifically about like her background and what led her to this work, but then also what does the work look like in an everyday context within the department in which she works, and then just in her interactions with others. So Shayla, thank you so much. Very, very kind of you in the middle of a busy day to take time with us.
Yes.
And just the general first question, just where you are from, what were some of the formative influences on you when you were younger?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Denver, Colorado, but I have lived a lot of different places. Because of this career field and this type of work, I moved here to Wisconsin from Salina, Texas, which is like a suburb of North Dallas. And so some of the influences of how I got into this work is I was not an athlete myself, but my brother and sister were involved in athletics, and I just always was around sports because of them. And so I just enjoyed watching games and being a spectator. And when I was an undergrad, I initially thought I wanted to be some type of like entertainment lawyer, particularly like a sports attorney or an agent. And I got involved working in the athletic department of the University of Arizona. But I knew I had also a passion for education and really wasn't sure how to marry the two or how to be able to stay involved in both things. And so that was the genesis of my pursuit or even my career endeavors of working as an academic advisor in college athletics.
So at Arizona, that was postgraduate?
No, that's actually when I was in undergrad.
Okay.
So I went to the University of Arizona for my undergraduate degree. I got my degree in elementary education, which was a huge pivot. I started out as a political science major, so I thought I was going to go to law school to do entertainment law. And then I decided that I didn't want to take that route, so I pivoted from political science to education, but I worked in our college athletics department in the public relations office, so doing a lot of community engagement and outreach. And I loved it. I loved the environment. I loved kind of being behind the scenes part of college athletics. I liked and being engaged with the community. So we did things like autograph sessions for kids and nonprofit organizations. We ran tailgates on football game days. And so it just, I think, deepened my passion for athletics. But I knew I really liked college athletics. At that time, I felt like I was supporting my peers because I was the same age as the athletes at that time. So I really liked feeling like I was a support system to my peers. And then I grew a passion of like, how do student athletes take advantage of the opportunity to get a free degree, a free college degree, being an athlete. And I would hear my friends complain about school and how to manage their sport and school. And so all of that piqued an interest in me of like, I would love to help with this. How do I get involved with this? How do I like motivate the student athlete to see the value of a degree? Because I'm a paying college student, right? So in my mind, I'm like, I would love to go to school for free. What do you mean? And then like, there was this saying back, this was in, I was at Arizona from 2007 to 2011, a saying of like, we need to like reinforce the student and student athlete. Like the athletes are too much athletes and not enough students. So I bought into like that rhetoric of like, how do we reestablish the student part and student athlete? And so that then sparked my push to figure out how I can still stay in academia and work with college athletes. And so I took a 1 year gap between my undergrad and top third grade. And that was further confirmation that primary education was not for me. And so I applied to graduate school at Kansas State University. That's where I got my graduate degree. And I worked as a graduate assistant there in their athletic department doing academic advising. And I got my graduate degree in student development and academic advising. So I was there for 2 years. I worked as a GA with the football program, and then I worked with rowing and track and field as well, as a graduate student. And so that was kind of how I was figured out how to stay in academics and work in college athletics.
So that preparation as a teacher, even though that wasn't what you wanted to do, you still kind of had the education component to what you're doing when you're at Kansas State.
Yes, so if you go on the path of teaching, the skills that you need, as an educator of like how to plan and organize things, how to think about, students' needs and knowing that this is the accomplished goal, that every third grade student knows how to multiply double digits, but some students don't know how to add double digits, and some students know how to multiply double digits, and so they need something a little more challenging. It's like differentiating your curriculum. All those skills helped me when I transitioned into college athletics to think about like, how can I support students and their individual needs, right? So all my students had different majors. They came from different academic backgrounds and preparations. They all had different goals or aspirations once they graduated, finished playing their sport, what they wanted to do in a career field. And so all of that, while I didn't stay as an educator, it prepared me for, or gave me the skills that I needed to go into a space where I could support the student athlete population.
So as a GA at Kansas State, you were actually doing advising of students, of
Yep.
football players and others, and then that was during graduate school. You had was your graduate work in the area of athletic administration, or what was your graduate work?
No, my graduate work was in student development and academic advising. So I did a lot of my background for my graduate degree was more so student affairs type work. So within my cohort, I had a lot of graduate assistants that worked in residence life, or they worked in student affairs or Greek life. So they came from a lot of different areas that supported student affairs. I came from the athletic background. Kent State didn't have an athletic track master's degree program. And so it kind of fit my vein. So like I didn't really there was like maybe 1 or 2 sport emphasized courses that I took, but I really didn't get a whole lot of preparation from an educational perspective on like how to work in an athletic centered space. A lot of my academic or educational background is in academia. So
Whether was at Arizona or Kansas State, were there certain women or men who you kind of were watching during those times, and you were like, I would kind of like to do that work that she's doing or that he's doing? And what were some examples of that interest you to keep going in the field?
yeah, so one thing that I think was great, and I think is still great about Kansas State, was they were really invested in training up young professionals. So when I got to Kansas State in 2013, there was an initiative, one, to diversify staffing. So I came in with a lot of other young Black professionals, not just in athletics, but across their student affairs on campus. And they were my peers, and some of them were working their first full-time job, and then others were GAs like me. And so it was really great to be surrounded by people who were like-minded and had similar interests to me. One thing that I did know in that space was that was an opportunity that exposed me to other professionals in the area. And so one of my good friends still to this day, Corey Pinkett, who actually runs the academic services at Baylor, I met at Kansas State. We started at the same time. And then another really good friend of mine, Ron Moses, runs academics and a bunch of other things at ODU. And they were a little bit older than me, but even just the zeal that I saw them show up to work with, and their passion of helping the student athlete population, it was like, this is exactly what I want to do. I also got to do professional development and meet other people from other universities that were doing the things that I thought that I wanted to do or that I had an interest in doing. And so being at Kansas State, being at a school where that was one of their missions, was preparing young professionals to excel in higher education, not putting them in a space where they were gonna burn out or they didn't feel valued, but really it was such a great training and learning experience. And they knew that Manhattan, Kansas is in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. It is a very transient university. You don't get very many people, particularly younger professionals that stay 10, 20, 30 years. They usually come for 3 to 5 years and then they move on. And they understood that that was going to be kind of the culture there. So how can we maximize and how can we know they were like, we want you to have a really good experience so that you can then refer someone to come back here. Like, we know this is kind of going to be a revolving door situation, but we want to make sure you have a great experience so that when you transition out to your next full-time opportunity or your next leadership opportunity and you're meeting younger professionals, you're referring them back to us so we can groom them and push them back out into the workforce. And so K-State was such a great opportunity and I'm forever grateful for my time there.
You know, one of the main things I'd be interested in asking you about is your everyday work here, but what something you just said, I think is really worth talking about, which is like institutional type and how different the work can be. So whether you've talked about some big institutions like Arizona, Kansas State, here at Wisconsin. What have you observed in terms of like the type of institution, how it shapes the work you do?
Yeah, I think, I haven't mentioned, I've been at a total of, let's see, what is that, 5? This make my 6th school. When I left Kansas State, I went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and then I went to the University of Georgia. So I've been, I said, I've lived a lot of places because of this career. It's taken me a lot of different places, but that's a good point to make. Every school that I've been to has been very different. When I was at Kansas State, we were, I would just speak for like the football program. They were heavily focused on transfer students. So we would get a lot of juniors coming from junior college, which is a very different type of student than an incoming freshman. Those students also were there for 5 years. They redshirted all of their freshman class. It was very few freshmen that played their freshman year. So when you think about what I do as academic advising, helping students create graduation plans, planning out their next 4 to 5 years, college athletics in general was totally different in 2013 than it is in 2024. And so they were, K-State's culture from an athletic perspective, particularly with football, was working with more older, mature students for 2 years. And it kind of across the university though was like, you have them for 2 years, maximize, train them up, prepare them as best as you possibly can to send them out into the world. And then I got to the University of North Carolina, and that's a very prestigious public institution. Those experiences were probably more similar to your smaller private schools, and that the type of student that they recruited, the type of students that got into school there were what you would call probably way more academically prepared, academic scholars. And so the type of support that those students got were also very different, in that we weren't as hands-on. Those students were trusted to be more independent learners and responsible for their educational journey. And we more so focused on monitoring eligibility. Also, I got to UNC post the academic scandal that they had. So they really revamped how academic support services looked for student athletes. And so how we were able to support students was very different because we're navigating a very fragile academic world there, right? So I had to work one-on-one with students, but it was very monitored in how I engage with them. And I had to be very strategic in my campus engagement because there was a broken trust between athletics and campus, right? Like the campus is like you're tarnishing the values of the University of North Carolina. Like we're a prestigious institution and now we have this scandal and this reputation of cheating and not holding athletes to the same standards as students. And this is tarnishing like our reputation as a campus. And so I had to navigate challenging relationships between athletics and campus. And so what that taught me though was the value of those relationships, right? Like we have to work collaboratively together to ensure that these student athletes are successful. And so that was an interesting time. And then I went to the University of Georgia. That's a football powerhouse. Excuse me. And that was the first time that I really felt academics took a backseat to athletics. And that was probably the place that I was the most challenged in my philosophy or my philosophical approach to being an advisor, because I felt that it was important that those students, athletes, were supported holistically. And it was very hard feeling like I was competing with the expectations of them as athletes. And, you know, the University of Georgia, they have very high caliber athletes. They recruit the best, they get the best. And so you can, you know, there's a chance that of my caseload of students, I would have 8 to 10 that would be drafted from a football perspective. I was there when they had a top high profile basketball athlete. And so, but navigating how do you support those students is very different. And so I had to learn, like, how do you support a student athlete's athletic dreams while still pushing them academically? So all of these places have taught me how to approach my job differently. How do I hold true to what I know is important to me as a professional, what I philosophically believe in, but also how can I be malleable in these spaces to be who my students need me to be, to fit into the culture of not only the athletic department, but fit into the culture of the university. And honestly, I would say those experiences have made me pretty well-rounded. I feel like I can step into a lot of different athletic spaces and be able to adapt and then bring my experiences from some of the other places that I've been to say, have we tried things this way? Have we thought about doing things a different way? Or have we thought about implementing this type of support or program based on the different places that I've been and the different type of student athletes and athletic programs that I've been a part of?
It's an interesting journey. I mean, you've been at these amazing but very different institutions. And I would imagine every time you make a move, it's like a hard decision. It's a big life move. You're moving to a new community and everything. So why did you decide to come to Wisconsin? And that's maybe a transition to like, what do you do here? What's your title? And like, what does the work look like?
Yeah, so when I left the University of Georgia, I resigned from my role there in January of 2020. So this was pre-COVID shutting down the world. And I, to be completely honest, I got burned out in the field. And I was like, I don't think I want to do this work anymore. I don't know if this is for me. And this, it's funny, predates even how much college athletics as a whole has changed. And so I actually decided I was completely changing my career. So when I left the University of Georgia, I moved to Dallas, Texas, where my family was now living or is now living. And I got my license to do hair, and I changed my career for 3 years, and I became a licensed cosmetologist, and I worked in a salon space. And then I figured out, how can I educate? Because one thing that I know is true about me is like, my purpose is attached to educating and equipping and building up others. I'm a very relational person, so all of my jobs require me to engage with other people. But I know at the core of it, equipping, educating people is like what my purpose and what I'm the most passionate about. So I got my license to do hair, then I started teaching in the hair space. And my good friend, Ty Sedbury, her husband works here, Marcus Sedbury, and she was, oh, when they came here, she was like, yeah, you think you want to come up to Wisconsin? I'm like, nope, it snows, it's cold. And I honestly didn't have a thought of getting back into athletics. I knew from a outsider's perspective now how much the world of athletics, college athletics in particular, was changing. And I really felt like I didn't want to be part of that. And I hadn't looked for jobs in college athletics in almost 4 years. And I got onto the NAFTA website and I saw an associate director position open here. And I sent it to Ty and Marcus, and I was like, what do you guys think about this? She's like, you wouldn't consider it. You told me you would come. I was like, throw my name in the hat. And so it happened so quickly. I applied, and my interview process went really fast. And I would say that process started in August, and I was here by October 1st. So my move here is pretty new. And so when I took the job here, I am one of the associate directors for academic services. I oversee the academic and career support for the wrestling and softball team. And then in my leadership role, I working on reimagining our advising model. So how are we supporting our student athletes academically as an advising unit? And then I chair the Blueprint Committee. So a part of us reimagining how we're academically supporting student athletes, we're taking a more holistic but individualized approach to how we support our student athletes. So our Blueprint model is a way where we are assessing a student's individualized needs, and then we are recommending either services, programming, or resources to the student athletes based on what their need is. So we're helping them build their blueprint. It's their journey, their way, and we're helping them make those decisions based on what needs they're communicating to us. So I chair the committee that's overseeing a good part of this new initiative. And so it's been a very interesting reintroduction back into college athletics. So much has changed since I left in 2020. I was kind of on the heels of portal rules changing and transfer rules changing, and NIL did not exist when I was there. And so this feels like a whole new world to me. I think what has benefited me is having stepped away for 3 years and coming back, I feel even more flexible to adapt to these new changes. I would imagine that if I had stayed in it and now I'm being challenged to think about how I do my job differently, it'd be a lot harder if I had, 4 years in the game doing a job a certain way. But coming in as kind of fresher blood, newer blood, with a ton of experience, but nothing that's really tethering me to how I used to do my job, and being open to doing things differently or reimagining, or how can we enhance the student athlete experience has been really cool to see. So I spend a good amount of my day-to-day in the mornings in meetings because of my leadership responsibilities. So unit meetings and committee meetings, and then my afternoons are spent with students in and out of my office. I work specifically with softball and wrestling, but I have football athletes, tennis athletes, volleyball athletes, track athletes that will pop in and just speak. I think one thing that's been really cool is the saying that representation matters. I think I've always seen that in the role that I do. I see Black or African-American student athletes walk by my office all the time, and I don't work with them, I don't know them, but they'll stop and they'll say, hey, are you new? I've never seen you before. Where are you from? When did you get here? And so being just a Black woman in this department allows me to connect with our minority student athletes. And I love that they feel like they can have a connection with me, that they have a sense of familiarity and community when they're in my office. And so I usually will have a lot of student athletes that aren't specifically on my caseload of students that are just around. And it helps build community across sports, because it's not just softball or wrestling, but I have football athletes that are now talking to softball players, or I have a tennis player who's now connecting with the wrestler. And so I'm able to help build community, not just within the Black student athletes, but across sports. And giving them the opportunity to know, like, it's not just you and your team, there's 700 other athletes here, and there's thousands of other students here. It's important to build community. It's important to build a network and get out there and meet new people and try new things. So it's been a great experience transitioning here.
I was talking with a former student yesterday, and he now works at a really small school in an athletic department, and there are like 5 of them who work in the whole department, so they all do a little bit of everything. There's that extreme, and there's the extreme of like these really big athletic departments like this and the other places where you work. And so like right now, we're sitting in Camp Randall Stadium in the student athlete academic type of area. If you go down the hallway, you have your department, the academics, and there are multiple other departments and other people. So in addition to your interactions with your students, like you just said, and with, supporting them and then leading committees, how do you interact with the other units of the department? You're in the academic services. To what extent do you collaborate with people in other units of athletics?
Yeah, so I would say one of the unique things about Wisconsin is they have taken 5 units and they've put us all under one umbrella. So I have the opportunity now to collaborate with our community and engagement team. I have the opportunity to collaborate with our leadership and inclusion team. I have the opportunity to collaborate with compliance more closely from a collective work and not just, are we breaking a rule, or tell us if this is going against compliance rules. We have the opportunity to work with the career and the alumni association, which usually are very siloed departments. And so it's been really awesome because while we work in specific units or areas, you learn that people have experience doing a lot of different things, and people have strengths that like I can pull on in the academic space to say, hey, can you help me build out this form, or what's the best way to communicate this, or what's the best way to lay this out? And so it's really great to have the opportunity to cross collaborate. I'm learning that a lot of people are student athletes here, so collaborating with them is helping me learn the culture of not only Wisconsin athletics, but Wisconsin as a university, Madison as a city. I think this is probably the first place that I've worked where a lot of the staff is from Madison. They went to school here, and so tradition, legacy is very rich here. Same at a lot of other schools, but a lot more staff have been a part of Wisconsin their entire careers, their entire academic career. And so you can feel the tradition and the loyalty and the passion for the Motion W here. Probably not like any place I've ever been, to be honest with you. And so what that means to me is that we're all bought into ensuring that our student athletes succeed here, because it means more when you're invested the way that the staff here is invested. When you work in a place where people are a little more transient, they've been other places, loyalty is a little different, right? And it feels a little bit more like it's my job rather than like, no, this is a part of who I am. Wisconsin is a part of who I am. And so that's been a very interesting but exciting dynamic of this staff. Also, just the layout of our building where, like you say, we work down a hallway, but there's so many different, we have one of the player development staff members for football on our floor. So getting to engage with someone who works directly with the team on my floor and bounce ideas off of her and get feedback from her on programming that we're building. Even structurally, when you don't get to see people that way, it's hard to collaborate. But I think the intentionality of having different departments sprinkled amongst the 3rd and 4th floor here, the administrative side just being right across the football field, and like them having meetings over here, or my department having meetings over on their side. It's just ways that we're intentional to make sure that we are collaborating, but also that we just get to see who we work with, and we know day in and day out, we're all working towards the same vision and mission here.
You know, I think so many people, like, their most fond memories of college or even before, like college sports, it's like a fun thing and there's school spirit, and you probably have some of that at Arizona. Everybody has some aspect of that. And so the idea of working in college sports is like, well, that must be a fun thing. It must be an exciting thing. So to what extent is that true? Like, is it actually a fun thing to work in college sports? But then on the flip side of that, what are some of the tougher realities of it? Like, what are the parts that are most challenging and not so glamorous?
Yeah. I would say I definitely have some really fun moments, particularly like when you get to watch the teams or the athletes that you work with succeed and win games and compete. Definitely are the highlights. Seeing your student athletes graduate, them reconnecting with you 3-5 years after they graduated to say, hey, I got my dream job, or guess what I'm doing now, or, you know, even if you just see them on social media and now they're starting their own family, and like you've seen their lives, you see them mature and unfold right in front of you. For someone like me, a relational person, and even someone that just, like I said, is passionate about education, those are like the huge wins for me, right? I think the challenging things are, with how much college athletics is changing and evolving, is probably a better word than changing, is making sure that how I engage with my students remains genuine. I think with student athletes having way more autonomy when it comes to transferring to different schools, making money as student athletes, it can push what we're doing to feel way more transactional and less relational. Because a student may be here for 1 year and then they may be gone the next year. And like, so how do we support a student where things feel way more transient, even for students? It used to just be that way for coaches and staff, and now it's like, feels like a revolving door everywhere. How do you still show up and you make those genuine connections? How do you make sure that what I do remains relational, not transactional? When we talk about some of the realities of college athletics and the direction we're going in is profit sharing with student athletes, which means, what does that mean for resources? What resources are we pulling away from so that we're able to support them in this way? All of those conversations for someone like me that does the type of work I do feels very scary, because it's like, well, will there even be a job for me? Are student athletes still gonna be students? Like, I think particularly right now, we live in a world of a lot of unknowns, which can create a lot of fear in people, because now you question, what is my job? What is my role? What is expected of me? Do I have job security? And that can really impact how people show up, how you show up and do your work. And so I never want to forget why I show up day in and day out. And so when I'm frustrated from spending hours in meetings, or we're trying to get a program piloted and we keep hitting a wall, or just all the nuances that come with change in a department, change in how you do your job. Whenever students walk in my office, when they walk down the hallway, it instantly recenters me and reminds me why I'm doing what I do. We have always taken a student first, a student-centered approach in any aspect of higher education that I've worked in. It's always been student first, student focused. And those moments when they come in and connect with me, it recenters me, it reminds me, it's not about me, it's about supporting them. It's not about me, it's about enhancing their experience. It's not about me, it's about supporting them. And so their days get long, the work gets hard. Like I said, right now in the climate of college athletics and so much changing and rumors of this and these things being spoken about of change, it can really create a lot of anxiety. But I choose to stay grounded and rooted in why I do the work that I do, and it's to support students. And so when I feel myself drifting away from that, I always like to get around student athletes, whether it's going to practice or just engaging with them in the hallways, to just recenter me and remind me, this is what it's about, this is who it's for, and all the work that I do, as long as I'm doing it to serve the students, that is not in vain.
This discussion of relational skills, but also value for it, you can see how that really pours through in all that you do, and also your value for education, and then how those things in your work as an academic person in the athletic department is like a perfect fit, like your background as an educator. And I wonder what your observations are about other skills and attributes in addition to being, relationally centered, that you see as vital for people in this area, especially in like academic services. I want, for example, are there certain like technical skills or certain kind of cognitive attributes that are really important in working in academic services these days? I'd imagine it's like a lot of complexity. You have a lot of students studying many different things and knowing kind of what types of resources are available. Like, how does that all play out? Again, I guess the question would be like, what other attributes or skill sets are important in this work?
Yeah, so I would say from a cognitive perspective, any chance that you can tap into or read books on psychology, sociology, how the mind works. We think about all the time, like, how do we motivate students? How do we keep them engaged? Even knowing, like, I think back to my academic days of like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and things like that. Like, those things still play a huge part in like how I engage with students. The older I'm getting, the generational gap is getting a little larger. And so I'm having to remind myself that they're of a different generation. And so what motivates me doesn't motivate them. Like, and so reading up on things, being intentional about, even, and this is maybe not so much from an academic standpoint, but, being intentional about just engaging with with people from other backgrounds or different backgrounds from you. I think builds a skill of like how to being open-minded, having crucial or hard conversations, knowing how to respectfully like disagree or have differing of opinions are all things that I think have really helped me. I do my best to read my new role, or my role now in leadership has challenged me now to think about how I engage with my peers, so engage this way. So prior to coming here, a lot of my engagement was across the desk, and I felt like I could relate to student athletes. I felt like I was hip enough they would want to come in and talk to me and chat it up. And, but now as a leader, I'm having to be more intentional, learn how to connect, with my peers. And so if you want to move up in leadership and you want to have a leadership role, I think reading books like Crucial Conversations and, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge really are great books to like prepare you to be in situations where you have to lead others and lead others that maybe don't want to go in the direction. How do you get people to align with vision, align with mission? How do you get people to be comfortable with change? Like, even though they don't necessarily want to change, like, how do you get people to be comfortable with change? I think that's been my biggest challenge, is that all day long, I feel like I can connect with students. But now I'm being challenged with like, how do I motivate my peers? How do I inspire my peers? How do I lead my peers? How do I hold my peers accountable? Like, what is that separation between being a peer and now being a supervisor? And how those working dynamics and relationships change. And I think some of it is like soft skills that just some people have. But I do think that a lot of being able to do this type of work and do it effectively requires that you be a lifelong learner, that you have to be willing to read books and do your own research and talk with people who have been where you've been or are going where you want to go, and find out, how did you do it? How did you motivate your staff? And have those conversations, being vulnerable enough to say, and have the humility enough to say, I don't really know how to do this. This is something that I want to do, but I don't really know how. Can you show me? I think a lot of times I was given a leadership position, I think because of the soft skills that I have, but there have been many times where I've had to go to my supervisor or go to leadership and say, I don't know how to lead this meeting. I don't know how to get my group back engaged. Can you show me? Can you give me some tips? So that we're all growing and learning together. And so I think as I've matriculated through, just had a conversation with one of my colleagues today about like, if you lead across the table, it seems you would assume that like the skills are transferable to here, but it's a very different dynamic when I'm trying to lead and engage with my peers and engage with the student, because of this authoritative gap between a student and their advisor, or a student and their coach, right? And so being a lifelong learner, knowing that like I love education. So for me, it's not hard to want to pick up a book and read and learn something new. But if I could encourage or give a piece of advice to anybody that might be watching, that is, never stop learning. Never stop being curious, never stop asking questions, never stop wanting to know more or wanting to be better. Because it's very hard to get stagnant in this world, because things are always changing. And I think You identify what your core values are and you allow those things to anchor you. But then you always are looking for ways to enhance and be better. And I think that is one of the keys to being successful and growing in this industry.
I think one of the last things I was wanting to ask was about advice, and that's like priceless advice, the kind of lifelong learning one. And then the other one I'm hearing consistently from you is just the value of relationships and connecting. So learning and connecting, growing relationships like intertwine, clearly we learn through each other. This other thing I think a lot of our students face a lot is like this desire, kind of a vague desire to work in college athletics. When I say vague, I mean, again, it's like people who love college athletics and they want to get a job in college athletics, but they still are a little bit unclear precisely what that means. I think like right now you've given us a whole lot of clarity about like working in the academic aspect of athletics, what that looks like. The other thing that you've done is that you've been able to work at like really different places and move around. So I guess I'm coming to a question of advice for, first of all, how do people who are on the outside, what advice do you have for them to get started? Like where do I even begin? You know, it can seem overwhelming, I think, to get your foot in the door. Like, what's your advice for someone to first get their foot in the door? And then like a follow-up to that that's related is, when you are looking at places, what are the little indicators that's a good place to be? Like you, having been working at very good places, did you get a sense when you were like interviewing, that's an indicator this is a place I want to be? Or on the flip side, like there could be a prestigious place, you know, a top athletic or academic place, but there may be indicators that that would not be a good place to be. So again, long question, but how do you get your foot in the door? And then what are the indicators that it's a good place to be?
So I would say, in the sports world, having a good network is definitely super important. And so, if you haven't done any type of internship or graduate assistantship in a space of college athletics, and you have the opportunity to seek those out. The NACADA website, the NCAA website, Teamworks website, all our have a job search engine function that posts those type of positions. And
What's the
like
first one you said?
NACADA, NACDA,
Okay,
or maybe it's NACDA. There's NACADA and there's NACDA. That was NACDA. I would look at those places and see what opportunities are still out there, what opportunities are available. Usually the life cycle of those jobs follow like a school year. So they usually bring students in summertime, July, August, and then assistantships, if you're in school, usually last throughout the duration of your graduate program. If it's an internship, sometimes they're year-long internship opportunities. But I would say definitely start by looking there. The best way to, I think, to grow your network is doing your research of people or positions that you would be interested in. And I used to send out just emails, like a cold call, if you will, and just asking for to do an informational interview. Because I really wanted to know what was their path to, how did you get to where you got, what did you study, where did you work, what type of work did you do? And if you're a little bit further along in your journey and you're coming back to school, but you have some work experience, particularly if you want to work in academics, I would say if you work on campus doing any type of advising or even educating is a great way to have work experience that's transferable to this specific population or demographic of student. I would say, getting yourself out there. The way I got connected, to Kansas State was I just had a family friend whose husband worked at the university who had previously did work in athletics. He was now working on campus, so he wasn't working in athletics, but I just networked through him. Hey, I would love to get involved in college athletics. Can you like help me? And he was the one who introduced me to the graduate assistantship at Kansas State. And it was funny because I was like, cool, they're there. I know people who live in Manhattan, this small town in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. And as quick as I moved there and took the graduate assistantship, he took a job in Colorado and they moved. But we've stayed connected. So sometimes it happens that way, but it is important to have a network who can let you know about job opportunities or who can put your name in the hat for opportunities that may be opening up. And so that would be, I think, a good way to get your foot in the door. Now, how do you determine what's a good fit? College athletics has a reputation of, if you want to move up, you have to move out. Particularly in academics areas, what I have seen is a lot of departments are now creating a hierarchy so that their employees and staff who have worked there for, significant time can be rewarded with promoted titles and responsibilities and opportunities. And so it is changing where there is a hierarchy, where there is some upward movement, and particularly in academics. But in the past, it used to be, if you wanted to move up, you had to move on to a different school, which is why I happen to have been to all the schools that I've been to. I think one thing that I think is important to always consider is the location of the school. I've worked and lived in small college towns pretty much all of my career. And I knew when I was at K-State that, like, I knew it was a means to an end. One, because I was a graduate assistant, but two, I just knew that I didn't see myself living in Manhattan long term. So sometimes, like, if you're wanting to be in a bigger city, or you're wanting access to a bigger city, it's 100% something to consider when you're applying to schools where they're located. Because while this job is time consuming and you have recruiting on weekends and you have sporting events that you attend, like, sometimes it feels like I don't have a lot of time to do other things, but work-life balance is still very important in any career field that you pursue. But I would say even more particularly in a space like this, where you're constantly pouring into others, you have to have ways to refill your own cup. So if being someplace where if you're a really outdoorsy person and you want to be able to ride your bike, take hikes, go to the mountains, go to, like, whatever things that you determine fill your cup, you want to make sure that there's some place where you have access to those things. Because the quickest way to burn out is you overwhelmingly throw yourself into your job and you can never pull away to refill yourself back up. So thinking about geographically where things are located, if family is important to you and you're moving further away from them, like, how does that impact you? I know that, like, when we're in eager pursuits for a career, we don't think those things matter, but they really do matter. And they do impact how you show up to work. It impacts how long you think you're going to be in a place. And so those are things that, like, I feel like we can control, or we have a say in where we pick to go. I also think that when you're going on interviews, ask questions about the culture of the place. What does a typical day look like? What is your leadership or supervision style? Like, those are important questions to ask when you're on interviews. Those answers will then give you a better idea of if this place is going to be a good fit for your goals and the things that you want to accomplish personally in your career. I think, like I said, being at Georgia is probably the pinnacle of athletic experiences that I've been at, but it was also a very hard place to work. And I got to go to the Rose Bowl and a national championship, and that was all very fun and exciting. But it was also a very hard place to work. And so knowing, having that experience, if I were to think back to, like, the questions that maybe I could have asked better, it would have been those exact things. Like, what is the culture of this place? What are the leadership styles of the coaches? How do coaches engage with academic staff? What does work balance look like for your staff? Like, when you get a chance to either talk to who would be your colleagues and peers, ask them, what does work-life balance look for them? How do they decompress from work? What do they do to fill their cup? Those answers will allow you to have a better understanding of if something's gonna be a good fit for you. I know one thing that piqued my interest when I came here for my interview was everybody spoke to how great of a work-life balance they have here. I came in the summertime and so students were here, but people were actually using their vacation time to take vacations in the summer. People felt like they didn't feel like they were going to be punished or penalized or judged for using their vacation time. That was important to me because I had worked in a space where, in the past, where if I took vacation time in October for my birthday, that was a problem. Although I had coverage and my students were okay, like that was a problem. Like I earned vacation time, but it was like an unspoken rule that like you shouldn't be taking it. And that was not a healthy work environment for me. So asking questions, knowing what matters to you and feeling comfortable asking those questions when you go on interviews will really help you determine what's a good fit. Knowing that smaller institutions have smaller staff means more responsibility. Bigger institutions with larger staff means that like maybe you don't get as much experience in all these other areas as you would as a smaller school because they have a larger staff and a larger department that can do things. So there's a lot of nuances to that, but I think in general, from an experience standpoint, college athletics from a talent perspective of a student, the playing field has leveled out a lot. And so a UCF talent as opposed to a Florida talent, when you're talking about a athletic experience, right, has leveled out a lot. And so I wouldn't let those things deter you from applying to a smaller, what would be labeled as a mid-major school to like a Power 5 D1 school. I think from an athletic experience, the playing field has leveled out quite a bit, that you're gonna go to see exciting games, you're gonna get to compete against the best with how the conferences have expanded so much. Those experiences I think have gotten better from an athletic perspective, but ask questions, go out when you do interviews. If you can, go on the campus, go see the campus, stay an extra day to see the city. Ask questions about things that are important to you and then take the answers that you get and then decide if you feel like something would be a great fit for you.
I think though, one of the toughest parts that a lot of our students face is like ambiguity again, like lack of clarity. So you gave us so much clarity around so many of these things.
Yeah, and I think
amazing insights. This is really great.
And I think the best thing you could do is get your feet in the water. Knowing what's not a good fit is just as valuable information as knowing and identifying what is a good fit. And sometimes you may get into a role or a job and say, this isn't a good fit for me, but I had lunch with someone who works in communications and that actually might be something else that I'm really interested in. Or I really like doing academic advising, but I really would like to work with Olympic sports. Like I feel like they're an underserved population and like that's where my passion lies is with, or I'm really passionate about international students. How can I engage more with them? So getting your feet wet, and it's okay to not know 100% what you want to do when you're first getting into it. Not like that experience is going to tell you one or two things, if something's a good fit or if something isn't a great fit, but the information either way is still very valuable. So if you're unsure what you want to do, set up those informational interviews, do as much job shadowing or touring of facilities as you can, talk to as many people as you can. I know that I'm open to emails asking like from students, like just asking for information or just my insight. I know how much my network and those connections have benefited me. And so I'm always open to connecting others to people who do things that maybe be outside of my scope of experience, connecting them to, I actually know somebody who works in development. Let me connect you to them. I know somebody who works in communications. Let me connect you to them. Because I believe that insight and those connections are important.
Shayla, awesome. Thank you so much. It was really
Absolutely.
great.
Thank
Really,
you.
really great.
Thank you.
This is lots to learn for all of us. Shayla,
you guys so much.
Thank you. That's really great.